weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. Because the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh. Yeah. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. Oh, I'm not backing down from any giants, 'cause I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory, and I'm gonna see a victory. Hey, the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, oh. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. I believe. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Oh, 'cause you take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. And I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory, yeah. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You're turning it around. You take what the enemy meant for God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save forever. Author of salvation. He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. Come on, Savior. Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save forever. Author of salvation. He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. Come on, let's sing. Shine a light in, let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. My Jesus, shine a light in, let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save forever. Author of salvation. He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave.
In Zephaniah 3:17, it says, "For the Lord your God is living among you. He is a mighty Savior. He will take delight in you with gladness. With his love, he will calm all your fears. He will rejoice over you with joyful songs." I just want to take a moment to pray over you today as a church ethos. Heavenly Father, we come to you in awe of who you are, in awe of the mighty Savior that you are in our lives, God. And today, I pray for unity in our hearts, that you will continue to unite our hearts together with one another as a church family and as a community. God, that we will stand shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, arm in arm, God, striving after what you have for us as a church, to walk in the path that you've set before us as a church, to live out your calling. God, as we are united, as our hearts are united, you will continue to show up in our midst. God, we are so honored and grateful for who you are in our lives, God, and as we stand united, we can continue to sing out how mighty you are and how grateful you are. And we're so thankful for that truth and that promise today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey Ethos, my name is Andrea, and we just want to say thank you for joining us online today. We are blown away and just so honored that you are taking some time to hang out with us. If this is your first time checking us out, welcome. I know that I can speak for everyone when we say thank you for taking some time out of your day to be with us. We would absolutely love to connect with you. So go to our homepage or click the link right here that says connect and fill out the connect card. And by filling out that card, you are making a difference in our community. We'll be donating $5 on your behalf to a local organization called She Has a Name. They are fighting human and sex trafficking right here in our city. You may have heard and seen by now, and we are so excited to announce the launch of Ethos community groups. These will be small groups meeting all over the city to share and enjoy our Sunday online experiences together. We want to ensure that during this season, you all have an opportunity and the resources to connect with community around you and continue to build deep and meaningful relationships. These groups will roll out alongside state and CDC regulations, so head over to our website on the community page to get signed up. So hey, all of our high school and college grads, first of all, we want to give you the biggest congratulations for achieving something so great during such a unique time. We are beyond proud of you. And to celebrate you this Wednesday, June 10th, we want you to come out for a little 2020 graduation celebration. Come hang with us at the Olentangy River Brewing Company from 3 to 5 p.m. We'll have free coffee, Kona ice, and a gift for you. And this is not just for our Ethos graduates. This is for all grads in the community. So share this with your friends and bring them with you. So I hope you're not tired of hearing us say this, but generosity is our absolute privilege, and we seek to love our community generously and with everything that we have. As you know, we have started collecting groceries for our grocery give this summer for families who need it during this time. Yesterday was the first Saturday we gave away groceries to families, and wow, we are so honored to bless these families in this way. Ethos, we cannot say thank you enough for your continued generosity. Because of you, we are making a difference in our city and in the lives of people. So there are a couple ways to practice generosity. And if you're new to checking us out, there is no pressure at all for you to give. Right there on the screen, you can see those different ways that you can give and practice generosity. And if you have children, remember, this is a great time to teach them about generosity by including them in your giving and explaining where the resources are going to make a difference in our city. Thank you for being a part of all that God is doing. All right, so that's it. Let's get ready to hear a great teaching together. Grab the notes that are provided and engage with those around you, either in the same room or digitally. I fully believe there is something in this for you today.
Well, hey, Ethos, thanks again for hanging out with us today. If you are newer to our community, we believe that no matter what you believe, you belong here. And we're so grateful that you're with us. And if we can serve you in any way, we want to. Man, that's why we exist. We are not here just to simply talk. We want to really be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ in every area and in every avenue that we possibly can. So let us know, reach out to us, and we would love to help you out. And we are kicking off a brand new collection of talks, new series today called We Are With You. In light of everything that's happening with just race and the racial disparity and just the challenges that our nation has faced over the last 400 years, and particularly the challenges that all of our brothers and sisters of color have faced over the last 400 years, we just felt like we needed to talk about it. We need to have a conversation. We need to lean in with a posture of humility to learn and to listen and to really begin to develop a posture and attitude of empathy where we say, I feel you, I hear you, and I want to do something for you. And that's what this whole series, We Are With You, is all about. I heard somebody recently say that if I celebrate diversity, but I don't address the disparity, that's hypocrisy. And I thought, man, that will just not be Ethos. We want to celebrate diversity, and yet we also want to do something about the disparity. And so we're going to lean into and listen to some challenging truth. Sometimes truth can be very convicting. Sometimes truth can feel a bit like surgery on the inside of our souls where we're like, man, that kind of cuts to my core, and yet it's still truth. And just because I haven't experienced something doesn't mean that something isn't real. And so what I've done today is asked one of my good friends, Pastor Lonnie Keene, to hang out with us, to have a conversation with us. We recorded this conversation of Wednesday this past week, and it's just a honest and open conversation about race, racial reconciliation, the history of race, both in our city, in our nation, in our world. Pastor Lonnie pastors a phenomenal church, Strong Point Church in Whitehall, just on the east side of the city. Love him, love his heart, and I have no doubt that you're going to fall in love with him as well. So let's lean in and let's learn together. So in Proverbs chapter 31, it says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and the helpless, and see to it that they get justice. I think one of the reasons why we wanted to have a conversation today, Pastor Lonnie, is one, because you're a trusted friend and leader and somebody that I look up to as a leader in our city. as a pastor in our city. And I appreciate how often you'll randomly reach out to me and let us know that you're praying for us and Ethos, and just grateful for the opportunity that I've had to just hear a little bit of your story. And how long you guys been pastoring now? 21 years?
About 22 years now.
22 years, yeah. So, in Whitehall, Strong
Whitehall.
Point Church.
Yep, absolutely.
And had the opportunity to share there to your leaders about a year or so ago, and it was so fun.
And they're still talking about that.
Are they? Yeah, I get that sometimes. But I want to have a conversation, and one of the things that I've been asking just Ethos to be committed to during this time is kind of 5 things, really, is to just be humble in our approach, to want to learn, to be consistent in speaking up and standing up, to see the pain, not just the problem, committed to being united, that we're saying, hey, we're going to be people who are in this thing together, really slow to kind of point the finger and really quick to be like, no, that's my brother, that's my sister. And then the 5th one is prayer. And so we're starting this series today. I think I even forgot to mention, this is a part of a multi-week series that we're doing called We Are With You. Okay. And so we're kicking it off.
Okay.
With
awesome.
With a real and honest conversation. And I just wanted to hear from your perspective, as not just a Black leader in our city, but as a father and a husband. You know, when you see the atrocities, the oppression, specifically even, let's just speak real quick to George Floyd and what happened last Monday now. And, you know, how does that make you feel? Because, and I want to contrast that to when I see a white man murdered, I feel something, but not the same that you feel when you see a Black man murdered. Like, can you talk to that for just a moment?
Yeah, that's a big question there. You know, as I think about that, you know, as an African American male, you know, first thing I think of is that I have 3 Black sons. I have 2 Black grandsons. And so it just, you know, causes an array of feelings and emotions to come up. One of anger first, second one was sorrow, and the third one was some trepidation. Just, you know, what kind of America am I going to leave my 3 Black sons and my 2 Black grandsons to? And so, you know, it is the wonder always in the back of the African American male's mind, could have been me. I'm an African American male. So not only do I have 3 sons and the 2 grandsons, but I'm Black. And so sometimes it's just that, you know, walking on eggshells. I'll give you a prime example. Just a thought, and why I have to have the thought is interesting, is because on my way over here, I just bought a new car, and my license expired during the COVID-19. So they're expired now. And so because the BMV has been shut down for so long, you had to go online. I just didn't take the time to go online. They were giving us some grace periods as a result of it all. And so I have a BMV right next to me. The line is so long. I still haven't gone over. So I'm driving with an expired license right now. And I don't have a license plate on the front of my new car. I got 30-day tags. Actually, they gave me 90-day tags because of the COVID on the back. There was a sheriff parked right down here on the road as I was passing by. And just for a moment, I had that thought, what would happen if this guy pulled me over and my license are expired? And so it's just those kinds of things that as an African-American male, you know, we think about often, not knowing, you know, if the outcome's going to be favorable for us, you know.
Right. There's been a lot of talk, and we've seen some things on Instagram, social media, maybe even the news. I haven't seen anything on the news about this, but maybe it's been on there, about conversations that you would have to have with your sons that I would never have to have with my son. And I think that's confusing sometimes to the white community. And in fact, I feel sometimes that it's discredited. And I think it's unfortunate, but without going too far into that, 'cause I think we'll speak to that at some point today, what does that conversation look like for you? Like, in fact, if you could even just in the spirit of full transparency, like
I can tell you exactly what it
Yeah.
looks like. You know, I have to have these conversations with my sons all the time. When my sons was even younger, I would tell them, you know, they have to be very mindful of how they walk out of the house, what they even look like. You know, is there stereotyping? Absolutely there is. And so while, you know, I have full assurance that my sons are, you know, keepers of the law, there's still, because they're young black men, certain ways that they may dress or look will bring unwanted attention. And so I would tell them basically, when you're out in your car, don't put your hoodie on. Just don't wear your hoodie. It's just not good. Certainly, one of my sons out of the three likes to do his little tight do-rag for his little waves in his hair.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll get ready to walk out. Well, I said, never walk out with that on your head. I tell them, if you get pulled over by a police officer, the first thing you do is you throw your hands up on your steering wheel. It's the first thing you do. Officer, can I go into my glove department to get my registration? Officer, so you want to make sure that you're very clear with the officer on all of your movements, because you don't want to get anything misconstrued. And so those are the kinds of talks that I have to have with them. Really, it is not a one-time talk, because oftentimes young people, if they've never had those experiences or run in with the law, they just aren't cognizant of it. And so I've had those run-ins a number of times, and so I have to continually remind my young black sons how to carry themselves when they leave the home, so that they just don't get any unwanted police attention.
I was having this conversation with my daughter, who's 11, Sophia, just last week, as I was explaining to her what happened. We talked to her what happened with Ahmaud Arbery. We talked to her then the day after what happened with George Floyd, and she said with George Floyd, she said, Dad, she said, I don't understand. She said, why is that still happening? I thought all of that was done with. And I asked her, what do you mean? And she was beginning to describe what she's been taught about the civil rights movement, and made the assumption that that's now been done away with, because legislation has been, at least a certain degree of legislation has been signed as it relates to voting rights. That's part of the issue, right? Is that there is this assumption that, well, you got the same rights that I do, but can you speak to white privilege for a moment? Because we all have privilege, but can you speak to what you've experienced as it relates to somebody else having white privilege?
Yeah, I think for me, it's one of those issues where, you know, much of white America isn't forced into situations like Black America is. And I'll give you an example. Let me start by saying, to me, white privilege is, sometimes I go walking, or my wife goes walking, we're walking through the park, and we may say 3 white kids playing. And what automatically comes to mind for me is that they are not going to have to deal with some of the things that my 2 black grandsons are going to have to deal with. It's almost like the way has been paved for those white children to be successful in America. So much so that they can come out thinking, I can be the president of this country. Not so much for black kids.
Sure.
White privilege is something that really is expressed oftentimes subconsciously. Sometimes whites don't even know. I remember years ago, my wife had to teach me something that I didn't even know I was doing it subconsciously, because I'm sure we'll get to it at some point, how systemic this is. And I could be, and it still happens today. So what happened with George Floyd was just a great big explosion of the systemic, subtle racism and prejudices that we deal with every day in America. But I can go to the grocery store, and sometimes you go in the grocery store and you know how the aisle is tight, and maybe you need somebody. It's happened to me, I can't tell you how many times, in the mall, in the grocery store, maybe there's a middle-aged white woman who's coming my way. And 9 times out of 10, Pastor Jordan, she wants me to yield and submit without saying so. And I used to do it all the time, subconsciously, not knowing. And one day my wife brought it to my attention. She said, do you know what you do all the time? And I said, no, I don't really. And she shared that with me, and I started paying attention to it. And sure enough, to the degree where that middle-aged white woman would get an attitude if I didn't move. And so oftentimes I would always be the one who would say, yeah, excuse me, or yield and get out of the way. But now oftentimes I'm very, very conscious of it and I don't do it. I wait and see what they're going to do. And so it's one of those things, it's almost like a cat and mouse game that you're playing, but you understand what it is. But what I understand is it's subconscious for a lot. The way it was subconscious for me to yield. I didn't even know what I was doing, and it's subconscious for much of my white America, and that goes back a little bit to the superiority and the privilege. And so those are just some of the small dealings every day that we deal with in America. And I opened up by saying white America isn't forced into certain situations like Black America is, because, you know, Black America is forced to go into a white world and learn a white world and to work there. You know, I remember years ago when I started the church, we had a white family who came to our church. And they came a couple of weeks, they loved it. I mean, they loved the message and everything, but they couldn't stay. And we can't sit down and had a talk, and they just couldn't stay because it was predominantly Black and the area that the church was in. And so what I began to realize is that, you know, for the most part, and I don't necessarily make it totally a white thing. I think it might be a class issue, some of it, but, you know, they didn't want to work downtown, live in Worthington, and go to a predominantly Black church in the hood. That's where we were at the time. Because people want their lifestyle to match and to look the same all across. Even though the message was life-changing for them. They just couldn't get over the little bit of the systemic problem that we still have. And some of it is just deep buried so subconsciously that we don't recognize that there's a problem, because we can go vote and because we have had a Black president, and because, so it looks like on the big picture, everything is okay, but it's still all those little subtle things that are still going on, and it just pours fuel on the flame, on the kindle, when something like what happened to George Floyd last Monday.
What you're saying, it resonates so deeply with me, Pastor, because you even mentioned politics, and I'm so convinced that this is, as I know that you are too. So I remember talking about this at Easton when we had coffee one time. That this isn't a political issue. We know that. Anybody who thinks that race is a political issue, like, excuse me, I don't know if I even have time for that conversation anymore. This is a sin issue. It's pure evil. Let's call it what it is. It's sin. Black and white. It is what it is. And you can't cure sin by signing a bill into place. It's a matter and issue of the heart.
Absolutely.
And so this conversation has to stay in the church. And so I feel like we have to keep this conversation alive. We got to keep it going. And we're here at this moment today, and I hear everything that you're saying. How did we get here, though? Like, at this cultural moment, at this time in history, how did we arrive at this point?
Well, it's a great question. You know, I think without going too deep, we could stay all day here with it. You know, you look back at history, you know, in America, how the inception of America, and I believe, honestly, I believe, I'm cut from a little different cloth as a African-American pastor. So, you know, all African-Americans and all African-American pastors aren't monotheistic. So we don't all think alike, you know. So for me, you know, I think that, you know, so how did we get here? Like I said, it's been subtle and it's been systemic over the years. You know, we got here, basically, America was pretty much built on the backs of Black men. So free labor. Right, so then, you know, we started seeing some more freedoms come along. We're free now. We're up from our slave masters, and then we still got an issue in America because there's still a lot of work to be done, but there's no one to do the work. And so what started happening subtly was laws were being instituted. So these laws were being instituted that was primarily geared towards Blacks to easily break those laws. If you spit on the street, you can go to jail. So it's all kinds of laws that were put out, and those laws primarily were put in place to put you in jail so that we can continue to gain control to put you back to work. And so over the years, it's been years and years of this, and so you said something that I believe is very big. We've stayed silent, and much of the church has stayed silent. And I believe that politics is a nasty thing. I believe it has no place in God's house.
Yeah.
And I think that because we have been playing political correctness in the church, if the church can't model reconciliation, then we're in trouble. And I believe the church is the place to really breathe and show forth the heart of God. I tell people all the time, I'm not a politician, I'm not a civic leader, I'm a pastor, I'm a preacher. And Jeremiah 3:15 says, I'm gonna give you pastors according to my heart that will feed you with knowledge and understanding. So it's my job to feed people God's heart on the matter, God's mind on the matter, regardless of what the media and the politicians are saying. And I think oftentimes the sad commentary is more Christians are listening to that than they are to the heart of God. So it's our job as pastors to stand up and say, no, it's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's just wrong. And I want to add this too, Pastor Jordan, because I understand it's more sensitive for you as a white pastor and some of my white colleagues addressing these issues when it's so sensitive. And sometimes what has become an issue too is that we have to make sure white guilt doesn't get in the way of the truth. And so the truth is, looting is wrong. And so as a white pastor, you ought to be able to speak against that without feeling, you know, that's so sensitive and people are going to attack me. No, I think if we're going to speak the heart of God, we have to speak to all the issues.
Wow.
And one of the issues is the injustice that was done to George Floyd, and now there's more injustices being done to all kinds of Americans in our country. And we have, as pastors, see, the politicians won't do it. They'll pick sides.
Right.
But not as leaders for the kingdom of God. We have to speak to it all because it's God's heart.
Yeah, that's really good. I really appreciate that a lot. I think one of the things that I'm hearing as I'm talking to a lot of my white pastor friends about this exact thing is some of them, I've spoken to two of them who they said, they're like, I'm concerned that the moment that I start doing, because I told them, I said, we're gonna do a series. I'm gonna keep the conversation going. I don't want it just to be rhetoric and talk. We're gonna put our feet to the plow as well. And I said, I don't know exactly what that looks like. However, we are committed to doing something, not just saying something. And they said, man, I want to do that. We've never spoken about this before. And they were a little bit older churches than what we are. And they said, I'm concerned that the moment I do, it turns into people could leave. And in all full transparency, if we're going to have an honest conversation, that could turn into dollars and cents. And suddenly their budgets are hit. And sometimes that's too real for people to talk about. But I appreciated my friends who shared that fear that they had. And I shared with them, I said, for me, I don't have that same fear, but for different reasons. However, I would say to them, there just comes a point in history where you got to think, do I care more about what they say, or do I care more about at the end of my life, will he say well done? I gotta care more about him saying well done than I do about you saying well done.
Yeah.
And if I can live with that eternity in mind, and my brother is hurting, I don't care. I'm gonna run to the aid of my brother, regardless of whether or not I feel that they're even justified in their feelings. No, that's not for me to, I wanna have, like you said, the Jeremiah 3:15, the heart of the Father is to run to his children. Man, I want us to have that heart, like for our community at Ethos, like I want us to have that heart.
The acid test for racism in America is Sunday morning. Still the most segregated day of the week. And so, you know, sometimes you have white people to say, you know, I work with black people, I'm not racist, or we go out. Yeah, that's fine. The acid test is Sunday morning. And so I would say to our congregation, invite some of your white coworkers to it. And so the thing is this, you know, this is what the Lord began to reveal to me, and you touched on it a little bit opening up. And that is, I'm not coming into a world that I know nothing about. And so I'm comfortable, again, in a white world because I often visit white world. And so I'm comfortable there. So not just on Sunday morning for church. And so what God began to reveal to me, if white people aren't coming to your home, if they're not coming to your barbecues and cookouts, and your kids playing with one another, and you don't understand one another, they can't just lay all of that aside and feel comfortable on a Sunday morning. And so I'm saying anti-racism is when we can come together and break bread every day and not stay divided based on the color of our skin. And so, you know, my wife worked downtown for the state of Ohio for years before she came on with the ministry, and she had a number of white colleagues down there that I don't know if any of them had ever been to our home. She had been to theirs. And so I think that, you know, those are the kinds of behaviors that whites have to begin to understand, and maybe subconsciously because they don't have to. See, but if they're beginning to be made aware, here's how you can help, you know, say, I want to bridge that gap, and I don't want to be, and I want to be anti-racist, and here's what it looks like. It's not just in speech, but it's in behavior. Yeah, and I think it's the commingling with ethnicities, and whether that's black, white, Hispanic, Asian.
Right. You had made a comment to me, and I've never forgotten it. And I mean, it's been kind of I don't know, something I've been chewing on. It's been over a year and a half now since you told me this comment. You said, to the point that you had made, I always had a dream of having a multi-ethnic church. And you're the one who actually said this to me too. Not a multicultural, multi-ethnic church should have one culture, but multiple races and ethnicities within that one culture. And that stuck with me. And obviously it has, because I thought, man, that's so good. But the multi-ethnic thing is a dream that you've had, and yet you said, I believe, Jordan, that it's harder for a black pastor to have a multi-ethnic church than it is for a white pastor to have a multi-ethnic church. Can you explain that again?
Yeah, it's a great question. Some of it goes back to what I said subconsciously. Right. When I moved out of the aisle for the middle-aged white woman, there was something going on in me as a black person. There was something systemic going on her as a white woman. And so when we moved to Whitehall, which we're in now, but our first building that we bought in Whitehall, the news came out to do a big story on us about being there, and said, hey, there's many churches in Whitehall, why are you guys here? We said, hey, listen, there are no churches here that are multi-ethnic. And they said, oh, there's many churches here that, you know, have the white, and I said, but they're all by white leadership. You don't see any where there's black leadership. And so the issue has been, over the years, the systemic, what has been ingrained in our society is that whites can think and blacks can entertain. And so oftentimes when it comes to whoever is leading administratively, making decisions, teaching, it's always whites at the helm. And so blacks might be on stage with a microphone singing or playing, but when it comes to the decision making, because of what has been ingrained over the years, that is one of the reasons why blacks, subconsciously, I move out of the aisle for the middle-aged white woman, I can submit to a white leader, because subconsciously it's been ingrained that they're thinkers. But for whites, it has not been ingrained that blacks are thinkers, and blacks know how to communicate and know how to administrate and make decisions where they're worthy of me to follow their leadership. And so over the years, that's just been propagating itself, and nobody talks about it, but it's the reality, and we can't fix it until it's talked about, until somebody, you know, George Floyd's and, you know, Breonna Taylor's and these incidents is just like God taking little pins and sticking it in people to say, wake up. You know, we go silent so long on certain things, and it takes these kinds of things to kind of fuel the flame for us to kind of look in the mirror at ourselves and say, okay, where am I at in all of this? Yeah.
As you say that too, I think how many people could be listening or could hear that and think, I don't know if I believe that it's really ingrained, but my encouragement to anybody who would hear that could think otherwise would be just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it's not real. And secondly, I would ask, okay, then put yourself into a position where you have a black leader, whether it's your boss at work, whether it's somebody at church. How does it make you feel? If there's anything within you that separates yourself from their leadership or authority, that would feel different than you being led by someone who's white or of the same ethnicity as you. If there's a discrepancy there, then that's the system you're talking about. That's been ingrained within us. Because my kids don't experience that.
That's
I mean,
right.
my daughter doesn't experience that.
No,
if you
absolutely.
see her friends at school,
Absolutely.
she don't care.
Absolutely.
And it's taught
Absolutely.
over time. My daughter, when I think she was 7 or 8, and my son at the time was maybe 2 or 3, Judah had fell on the driveway and skinned his knees up. And actually, before he even started crying, Sophie ran over to him. She's only 7 or 8 years old. And I was in the garage, and I kind of heard her say his name really loud, like he got hurt. Judah! And she runs over to him, and I kind of turn, and suddenly he starts crying. His knees are all skinned up. She has a white shirt on, a white T-shirt on, and she goes to pick him up. And my first thought was, Sophie, if his knees are bleeding, it's going to get all over your shirt. We're not going to get that out. She didn't care.
She didn't care.
She didn't care
Yeah.
because it's her brother,
Yeah.
and he was in pain.
Yeah.
And she doesn't ask him, well, was it your fault? Did you forget to tie your shoe? Did
Yeah.
you trip over your own shoelace? Like what? Maybe this was your own doing. And another friend of mine said, you know what else, Jordan, is it wasn't just that it was her brother. It was that Sophie remembered a time in her life, more than likely, when she fell at another point too, and the pain that she felt. And so she
resonated
put
with
herself
her.
in
Yeah,
that
that's
position.
good.
Yeah. And I thought, man, that really connected with me. And it was like, maybe you haven't experienced, as a white individual, maybe you haven't experienced racism. You haven't, more than likely. But you've experienced pain of somebody hurting you whom you thought was going to be a support to you. Somebody let you down whom you were told was there to help, guard, protect you.
Yeah.
And they failed. For one reason or another, they failed. And you felt that within you. Okay, what you feel is what 99% of our black brothers and sisters are feeling, right? 99% may be a conservative number,
But let me just speak to something. I think that's wonderful what you said in the analogy with your children. I spoke to a pastor, a white pastor friend, a great friend of mine the other day, and his thing to me was, he asked me what I initially feel when I see an incident like a George Floyd. As a black man, what do I initially feel? So before I answered, I asked him, what do you initially feel? And he said, to be honest, he said, every incident up to this one, he said that I've had this experience, I felt like, let me not judge, let the facts come out first. And so what I wanted to share with him is, don't apologize for that feeling. See, I like what you said, Pastor Jordan. Let's remove what happened, and let's just deal with the pain of what happened. So regardless of who was right or wrong, pain is still there. And let's just go and address the pain. It was like, I was sitting here thinking about Job's friends just went and sat with him, man. Just because of the pain he was in. Now, I don't know totally what they said, but they said something that wasn't good. And God told Job, he said, you got to straighten them out, pray for them, man.
Yeah.
So two different issues. What they thought about what was going on and being there for their brother in his pain. So I'm saying, for me as a black man, I told him, I said, but that's been my stance too. So when an incident happens, I don't just jump on bandwagons and say somebody was wrong when I don't know the facts. I can't presume. I'm a pastor. I have to keep the heart of God. I have to remain transparent and be like, okay, let me see what happened before I started putting my voice to it. So I think that's just fair. It's just in this scenario, how could you deny what happened? It was right on film. It was on, so everybody could see it. But I'm saying that, to me, that's another one of those kind of subconscious things that whites are dealing with. And what am I feeling? Is it right? Is it wrong? And so sometimes they do need a black counterpart to say, hey, no, that's okay to feel like that, because I feel the same way. Doesn't do anything. The pain is still real. Whether, a George Floyd was in the wrong, in the right. The fact that someone died, life is sacred. And so we're in pain for that. And so I just think that I love the analogy that you use with your daughter. That's my brother. So I don't care if he was wrong. I don't care what he did to get this pain. I'm going to aid him in his pain. And I think when we get, that's the heart of God. And when we get that, we can really begin to model what racial reconciliation looks like. You know, I don't, here's the thing, honestly, Pastor John, I don't expect the world to model it. How can they?
Right.
Their heart's not regenerated. They don't have the heart of God. I don't expect them to, but I do expect the church to.
Wow. That's a true pastor right there.
Yeah.
And we have to do that, don't we? Because I got to remember that too. And so I appreciate you pastoring me in this moment, because that's, there has to be that separation there between the church and the world. Back to the point that you just said, it's like it's only the Holy Spirit that can transform a heart. And so we can sign a piece of paper that says there's equality, but until we're equal in our heart, there's not true equality. I was talking to another friend on Monday. Pastor's not too far from you, younger black pastor. And I was just calling him, "How you doing, man?" And I said, "Hey, what could we do together?" I said, "Is there something that our churches could do together? Is there a protest that we could do together, a peaceful protest together that just as a sign of solidarity, as a sign of unity?" And he said to me, "Jordan, I'm just really tired." He said, "I'm kind of weary from that." He said, I'm tired of doing that." He's about my age. He said, "I feel like I've heard that before. I've been there before." And he said, "I'm not saying that I don't want to do anything." He said, I just need some time to kind of just cool off." And can you talk to that?
I mean, absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons for a lot of the protests that have gone south now, because people are tired. And why I totally disagree with how, people are expressing themselves, I understand that when you don't know any other way to express yourself, oftentimes this is what you get. And so—
The voice of the unheard.
Yeah, the voice of the unheard. And so I think that, I think, there's a statement that's being coined that I've seen signs of people protesting: "Can't breathe," right? And I think, it's okay sometimes for, like the pastor was talking about, sometimes we do need to just sit back and breathe for a moment. I think sometimes we can respond or react too fast to situations, and sometimes we just do need to sit back and allow the Holy Spirit to minister to us and breathe some, so that we'll know how to move forward. And it's okay even for a pastor to say, "You know what, I don't know right now. I don't have the answers. I don't have a clue. I just need to breathe." And I think we're kind of in that situation right now. There's a lot going on in our country right now, and a lot of people are hurting, and a lot of people are being destroyed, businesses, and just a lot going on. And some of these pastors, and they're scared to speak to it, for people may walk out. I think if they do it in a way that just shows God's heart and love for humanity and for people, I think that when people understand that, because the big issue is here as Christians, we want to be like Christ. That's why we come to church every week. We want to be more like Him. And so as we preach what becoming the image of God or the image of Christ looks like, then I think, you can, somewhat slide in some of those issues, and make it more palatable for people to receive it, versus coming out a week later, right, and then just I think you got to breathe for a minute and say, "Hey, God, just speak to me on how you want me to speak to the people." And some of it, you just can't please everybody. You're always going to have somebody throw rocks, and so you have to take those risks, believe you're sharing the heart of God on those matters, So I think the biggest thing for us to do as a church is to model that for white pastors, for black pastors, for Hispanic pastors, all those pastors to stand up and speak the heart of God. And that's not sacrificing one group of people to highlight another group. See, and I think that's what's happening politically. We sacrifice one group to highlight another, and I just don't think that's God's heart.
My wife and I, we've been talking about that. We're like, if we say this whole group of people are going to be upset. If we say this whole group of people are going to be upset. Then if we even say this, then they're both going to be upset.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, where do you go? And so I appreciate that a lot, and just the pastoral wisdom of just breathe, lean in, and ask ask the Lord, what do you want us to do here? And do you still have hope that we can fix it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Here's one of the things I spoke to my church, and I mean, you can hear the people cringing. And some people who had my number sent me texts, and they didn't like it, but they said, Pastor, it was eye-opening because you spoke to places that I've never really dealt with. And here's what I did. I gave an example. I said, here's the acid test for racism. The acid test for racism is not you go to my white church and you're black, I go to your black church and I'm white. The acid test for racism is not really that you came over and you ate some fried chicken with me because you like how I cook fried chicken as a black man, right? That's not the acid test. The acid test is, can my black son marry your white daughter? And can your white son marry my black daughter? And I'm okay with that. See, that's the acid test, with whether you know racism and prejudice is really still in your heart. Because for me as a black man, as an African American, I don't care what color my sons marry as long as they have a heart for God. So there are people out there who would rather their child marry the same ethnicity, but they don't have a heart for God. I'm saying I don't care what ethnicity you marry as long as you have a heart for God, because to me that's what makes all the difference in the world. And so so when I said that, man, I saw people cringing in their seats, and people like, because they never thought about that. And one girl specifically said, Pastor, she said, there's no way I could let my son marry a white girl. But over the years now, she's still in a part of our church. You know, her perspective has changed more. She's got more of the heart of God. And so I just think sometimes those things take time. And sometimes you have to take those risks to really put it up in people's face to say, hey, here's what it really looks like. Here's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. We all say that we want the truth until we don't like how the truth makes us feel, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is certainly one of those topics where we need to hear the hard truth and allow that conviction of the Spirit of God to do a work, to do a surgery within us. And that's where the relationship is so important. That's where having, so for me to have friends of color who I'm genuinely living life with, who can be like, whoa, Jordan, hey, that's not okay. I love you enough to tell you that's not okay. And I, as the recipient of that correction, love the corrector enough to receive it. To be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's my bad. I'm sorry. I don't want you to feel that way about me. Yeah. So that relationship is so important. Like it all comes back to that.
That's good. And being aware. You know what I mean? Awareness is key. I go to a conference. I generally was going every year. I mean, you know, it's 90% white. Mega church. I'd go.
I know what you're talking about.
Know the pastor. Yeah. And when I go. The last time I was out, I was just telling someone in his church, one of the pastors in his church the other day, the last time I was out there, he came to me and he just put his arm around me. He said, Pastor Lon, I just want to tell you, thank you for coming into our world. See, because there's so many times I can go to white conferences, man, and people don't even recognize, they don't notice me, they don't say, but I go, and they don't recognize how would they feel if they were the only white among all blacks all the time. And so that awareness, you know, is just, to me that's pastoral. So that's being pastoral. And it sometimes amazes me how I can be in those settings and there are so many other white pastors, man, there should be a pastoral heart to notice there's someone here who's not really the different ethnicity. And I want to make sure they're okay here. You know what I mean? And so when he did that, I told him, thank you, because it meant a lot for him to recognize and notice that. Because sometimes I'm wondering if you even notice. You know?
That's so good.
So when you ask, do I believe it's possible to change? I do believe that the church has the power to change it. And at least model it, to make people say, I want what y'all got. You know, where is that when he comes and says, what must I do to be saved? Where is that in the world today? You know, where are people coming and falling at the church, kneeling and saying, man, what do I do? Man, what you got is so awesome, you know. And I think the church has to model it.
You have such a beautiful spirit about you, Pastor Lonnie. You resonate hope. You live joy. You lead so strong and with such consistency that even as I'm speaking to you now, I'm full of hope. And I feel like for me, this particular season and subject is personal because of my children. Because I'm like, number one, I want my kids to, I don't want them to be raised in the same, and I've got
Sure.
hope that they won't experience the same. But I'm also like, no, but we need leaders who are willing to pave the way, create the paths, have more and more conversations. And I see that happening. I feel like there are more conversations happening. I feel like this particular scenario, it's different than 13, it's different than 16, it's different than 2011. It's something about it feels different. It literally looks different, even in terms of the skin color of those who are uniting. There's a lot more diversity. And that's not, I want to make sure that we're clear too, that the minority of police officers who are brutal in nature and violent in nature is not speaking for the majority of police officers.
Absolutely.
Just as the minority of people of color who are violent in rioting aren't speaking for.
Absolutely.
Just as the white folk who are racist and maybe even the extremes are, white supremacists aren't the stereotype and the spokesperson for all of white folk.
Yeah.
And the thing that I appreciate about you so much is the way that you communicate hope and joy and truth through the lens of hope and joy and grace.
But I would say this, I think this is appropriate now. I think these talks are appropriate. It's almost like, they say in politics, bringing in other people from the other side of the aisle, you know what I mean? So we can hear those differences and perspectives and viewpoints. I just think that, what we do probably in peace is going to speak much bigger than what we do in war, And so now it's kind of like, whites, blacks are expected to stand up now. See, we're expected to now because everybody's so sensitive in this situation is so heightened. So I think it's when the water's calm and things seemingly are calm is what we do in those times, And I just want to keep going back to those interactions. What we can do is, for me, I was talking to a pastor the other day. I said, listen, when I first brought you to my church, I brought you out of a white world into a black world. And I told her, I said, you were funky dressed white boy. I mean, you had tight, skinny jeans on coming into my church. And I had to sit back and evaluate how my congregation was going to receive this. But I knew because you had something for us, I could palette it in a way that because my congregation trusts me, they'll trust you. And we've developed that relationship over the years. So now when you come, there's no issues. And so I just think it's in those times where we can model, man, I'm bringing a Hispanic preacher into my church or Asian preacher into my church and hearing from their culture. I thought over the years I've had, Africans come in to hear from their culture and their perspective. And so that way I think we just become a little more well-rounded, as a church and a people. And I think once we understand other people's story, then we're able to sympathize a little bit easier.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed the talk today and the discussion that we had. I hope that it was challenging to you. I hope that there was something that you just sensed God was speaking to you. And if you felt anything on the inside that kind of made you uncomfortable, like in a good way, that's the Spirit of God impressing upon you that there's change that we all need to lean into. I know that there were things that were said that Pastor Lonnie said, I thought, man, I needed that. I needed to hear that. That's good correction, good encouragement for me. If you need prayer for anything today, we're here for you. If you're watching us through our website, you can click on the button that says Live Prayer. And we have one of our prayer servant leaders that would love to take you kind of into a separate private chat room and just hear a little bit more about your story. And if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, go to our website and click on the connection card and just let us know. However it is that we can be praying for you, we will reach out to you. And if you want to make a decision to follow Jesus, today is an amazing day to make that decision. Maybe for quite a while now, you've said, man, I need to recommit, rededicate my life, or I need to make a decision to follow Jesus for the very first time in my life. I think there's nothing that would make God more proud on this day than for you to say yes to being a follower of Jesus. Let us know that too. Again, you can go to our connection card or just click the button right there through our church online platform. You'll see a button there that says raise your hand. If you want to make a decision to follow Jesus, click that button. and we would love to follow up with you and let you know what this journey of faith looks like. And more importantly, we'd love to journey in this journey of faith with you. We love you so much, church. Let us know if you need anything at all. We've got you, and we'll see y'all soon.